Hey, folks, welcome to the Beans and Dice podcast. In today's episode, Mitchell and Carlos catch you up on a lot of games that we've been playing. Tons of games because of the game day, tons of games because it's summertime, which means it's gaming time. So stick around to hear from us on what we've been playing.
You're listening to the Beans and Dice podcast, a podcast about how we game.
All right, folks, thanks for sticking around. We are starting off the show with our rundown of games that we've been playing recently. Today, I'm going to let Mitch get us kicked off and going because I've been seeing a lot of pictures on the Facebook group and the Discord conversations about games you've been playing, Mitch. I know it's towards the end of the year for summer and it makes everything busy, but you're still, with your first week of summer, getting a lot of stuff going.
Well, yeah, man, whenever I'm teaching all year and then all of a sudden I don't have to go to work, these last couple of weeks have been awesome. A lot of gaming. And honestly, this has been a little bit more limited than usual because I have a show that we've been rehearsing. We just opened last night. So now it's going to ramp up even more, the gaming. But we're getting in the final stages of my challenge that I've talked about with my buddy of us trying to play everything in each other's library. So a lot of these games are Jeremy's games that he's been teaching me. Some of the more, I guess, the ones that they're at the end of the line for a reason. I'm less interested in them. He hasn't played them in a while. But one exception to that, he was just given a game actually by BJ after they played it on stream with Board Game Gumbo. And I actually really enjoyed this one. It's called Roar and Riot. Now, not Dinosaur Island Roar and Riot. This is ROAR. Dinosaur Island Roar and Riot is RAWR. This is published by Galactic Raptor Games. It's a really different game. It's a roll and write. You're rolling, I believe it's 6 dice. And it's just this little bitty sheet of paper, and you only have a couple decisions to make each time. You're trying to appease, I guess these animals are kind of like gods. You're giving offerings to them. But at the same time, there's a council board where, no, it's called a kingdom board. That's what it is. Where you're sending your offerings to different areas. And so at the bottom, there's 5 different rounds. And you're going to choose to send all of those rolls in that round to one of these like gods that you're trying to give offerings to. But each time you roll, you can for free give one of those rolls up to the representative board up at the top, or you can spin spots in where you can possibly give offerings to these gods to go more up on the offering board. So for example, I'm looking at a picture here of the offering board. One of them, there's 5 slots, and over the course of the 5 rounds, it wants you to have 5 numbers in there, but they have to be in ascending order. One of them wants to be in descending order. One of them wants it to all be the same number or to add up to 14. So you're having to make these decisions based on one roll. Like, okay, I'm going to put a number here, and over the course of the next several rounds, I have to make sure this adds up to 14. So there's a lot of math going on. But at the same time, you're only using the dice that you don't want to use at the bottom, trying to give offering to these different animals. And the cool thing is, each round is not set to a specific animal. I start filling in numbers, and at the end of that round, I decide which animal I want to give it to, because each animal wants different things for different points. And that's what's modular in the game, and the different cards flip out. So one of them, for example, wanted all the same number. One of them wanted numbers that added up to multiples of 5. It was very, very abstract, and it's very hard to explain. But if you see this sheet and you play this game one time, you know exactly how it works. And the cool thing was, every single sheet in that roll and write is asymmetric. Very, very slightly, but it's like, this sheet is wanting pairs of these numbers and singles of this number, and it's going to be different than yours. And in that whole pad, every single one has a different personal goal, which I thought was cool for a roll and write.
I'm pulling up pictures now. I've never heard of this one. I've heard of the Roar and Write, the Dinosaur World one. This one I've not heard of. I'm looking at the imagery of it. It has almost like an Aztec-y type.
Yeah.
Is that even a word?
Yeah. Hey man, we can be Shakespeare. We can make up words.
I do that all the time. But I see the scoreboard. I see the hexagon. Would that be a pentagon?
Pentagon, yeah.
With the different places to fill stuff in. Does the theme come through? Does the game connect the theme enough where it doesn't feel like just filling in digits on a spreadsheet? Is it worth it?
Probably not. I'm a little hazy on the theme, so we only talked mechanics whenever I was learning it. That's why I said I think you're like giving offerings to these animal gods, but I'm not 100% sure. So honestly, you probably wouldn't like it then. Though the art is really cool. Some of these animals look very majestic, but at the end of the day, I was focusing on the numbers, popping on the dice, and not the theme of the game.
That makes Carlos sad. You know me. I'm all theme integration is huge. It's paramount. Is that a word? That's a word.
Paramount.
Paramount. That's the
Yeah.
movie place.
Now, one thing, I don't know if you saw in any of your pictures, the dice are really cool looking, but they are so hard to read. This game, we probably played in 15 minutes. We probably could have gotten it done in under 10 minutes, but every time the dice were rolled, what we did, we just had to put them in ascending order of the roll because otherwise we could not tell what the number was because it has these little designs and the number is like secondary. But they're pretty looking. They're green. That's Roaring Right. I just had it. Something. I Googled it. I said it earlier. I'm going back on BGG. Galactic Raptor. Designed by Carla Kopp.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to make sure we share those deets as well. All right, let's continue the roundup. We had our Saturday game day last week, so it gives me a lot of games to catch up on, but I really didn't play as many games as I expected to, and that's because I focused a lot on bigger war games. And for me, the title that I was really dying to play was Oak and Iron. It's by Firelock Games. It's a company out of Miami, and I've met the designer at a wargaming convention, Mike Nunez. He's a Latino like me, out of Miami. He's got a degree, like massive degrees in history, focusing on the pirate age. That's his big thing. So he tries to make everything very actual to the history instead of the fantasy. It's not like your Pirates of the Caribbean pirates. But this is an Age of Sail game. They've got miniatures that go on plates, on base plates, and you use little templates to maneuver with. And at the beginning of your turn, you've got a hand of 5 cards. These are your initiative cards, and they have different initiative values on them. And then they're each going to have a different ability when you use that initiative card. Whoever plays the highest numbered card is going to be able to go first on that round. So they'll be able to maneuver first, to be able to fire first. There's a lot of good things involved there. However, the card play is key because some cards allow you to do some really good abilities, but maybe push you down lower in the initiative range. So this is almost this back and forth decision of, are you trying? I'm trying to go first. Are you trying to go first? Or I really want to put off this maneuver, but I need to let you go first. So that's a part of the game that's really interesting. And then once you set those cards down, you reveal. As soon as you reveal, you declare initiative. You proc the abilities that are on the cards, and then you select next round's initiative cards before you actually do anything on the board. Before you move, before you shoot, you kind of have to decide ahead of time, what are you going to try to do next time? Which it kind of gives you that theme of it's an Age of Sail game. Things don't happen quickly. If you want your ship to move that way, right, left or port, you need to start like making stuff happen now. But like you can't just instantly make things happen. So you have to kind of make decisions. And then you're using these little templates, almost like little rulers. So picture a 1/2-inch wide ruler, and maybe they go 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches in distance. And that's your speed of your sails based on the size of your sail, like how much sail you have put out there, and your orientation to the windward side of the board. The board is going to have a wind gauge pointing, saying this is where the winds are coming from. So depending on your orientation to that, how much angle you have either away from it or towards it will impact your speed. So you're seeing how you feel this real nautical feeling of like, okay, I want to go fast this turn, so I need to really get my ship pointed away from the windward edge so I can get some boost in my speed. But now I'm being outmaneuvered, so I need to kind of cut back into the wind, but it's going to really slow me down and prevent me from turning as much as I want. So I'm not going to go too deep into it because it's a miniature war game. It's about a 25-page rulebook. Not huge when you think about a 25-page rulebook for a miniature war game, but the feelings that it left us with. Max brought his Age of Sail game that Robert and I have played before called Sails of Glory. And afterwards, after we played that game, we were going to set up a game of Sails of Glory to kind of go with it. And Max was like, no, I think this is the game I want. Like, how do we now convert my ships into this game from Sails of Glory? And we played more Oak and Iron. So that's how good of a system it is. So if you're someone who likes Age of Sail, someone who likes tactical maneuvering on the board or miniatures, I'm going to have to recommend Oak and Iron. After my second play of it, Max and I played 2 rounds that day. Oak and Iron, this is by Mike Tunez out of Firelock Games.
So I saw the pictures of this game on Facebook, and I was very, very interested. I'm not a huge war gamer, but it's something that draws the eye. So I have a couple questions. First of all, does it come with its own playmat?
It does. Water? You get the water playmat we played on was Max's water playmat from his Sales of Glory game. The box set does come with a paper high gloss, so like a coated paper board mat, and it's, I believe, probably 3.5 by 3.5, maybe 3 by 3 in dimension.
Well, first of all, I just think that's, for people who are more board gamers than war gamers, I think that's important. You know, whenever I first played Song of Ice and Fire tabletop miniatures game that I got at Dice Tower East, and you graciously slipped over that big box, the weirdest thing for us playing our first war game was like, wait, there's no board, like we're just using our table. So this game sees almost like a gateway from board games into war games a little bit. And I don't know, just the miniatures are so cool looking. I had a couple questions. So I'm looking on VGG. Some of the boats have almost like, it looks like a puzzle piece, like a little nib at the back. Is that just for maneuvering your boat? Is that to put your finger on?
That little circle nib is actually a place to put your nationality indicator. So if you're the pirate, there's a little circle token that slots in there, so all your ships can be marked as pirates. There's also ways to mark ships with numbers. So let's say you have 2 of the same frigate on your that you build for your squadron of ships, your fleet. You can put number indicators in that same token spot, so that you can say that's my number 1 frigate, that's my number 2 frigate. It's just it's a place to put a token.
Okay. My other question was, again, on BGG, it looks like there's some like little like smoke plumes that go out. I guess maybe that's after there's a battle or something. Does that negatively affect you if you sail through where there was a battle? Like there's flotsam and jetsam in the way or something?
No, what you're seeing probably on the BGG are the fog. So what you didn't see in the pictures that I posted up because we played the base set, you're going to be actually a mini game within the game to set up the game. There are going to be cards that are flipped for terrain, so either islands or fog or rocks, right? There's going to be cards that are going to flip for deployment, and there are going to be cards that are going to be flipped for objectives. And then we're going to go back and forth based on who won initiative, deciding which cards to use and which ones to not use in order to establish the terrain, the objectives, and the setup, the deployment for that game. You're seeing fog. Fog impacts your ability to maneuver, to see through and fire, but there are tokens that indicate firing. So, for example, if I choose to broadside from one of the sides of my ship, or both, when I broadside, I can do both sides. I have to indicate with these smoke markers on each side of my ship that I've already broadsided. Until I take a crew reload action, I can no longer broadside from those sides. I have to tell the crew to go down there and make that happen. I can only fire maybe a small amount of cannons out of either side one time per round after I've completed all my broadsides. So yeah, there are a lot of little tokens that kind of add beauty and terrain and picture, but they work. They're meaningful. They're not just for aesthetics.
Can you go and ram into other ships?
Yes, there are rules for collision. There's rules for entanglement. So if I'm close enough to you, what they call a yardarm close, I can make an action with my crew and attempt to entangle your ship, pull you real tight, and then I can do boarding actions, depending on how many crew members I have, to be able to attack your ship by crew and take it over. So if I can attack and kill your ship, I can take it over. When you're shooting, you have options. I didn't want to go too deep, but I'm glad you're asking questions because I really like this game. When you're shooting, you have options. You can shoot just kind of standard barrage, like I'm just going to chuck dice at you and see what happens, and where they hit is where they hit. Or I can focus my shot. I can do things like you get 3 options, either regular, or I can focus on your mast, right? So to try to bring down your rigging and slow you down, and that would be a chain shot is the type of cannon fire you would use to use a chain to wrap around your mast and take it down. Or I can do grape shot, which is attacking your crew. So I can shoot at your crew, and if I do enough damage, I can actually take out your leader. If you had a captain or an admiral on that ship, they're dead. You can no longer use their ability because I was able to hit your the space where the captain's located. So there's so many tactical options when you're deciding what to do, and then that tactical maneuvering piece matters so much because you got to line up shots. and it was awesome because at one point, and this is very historically accurate, you want to cross the T. Right? So the idea behind it is if you can get your broadside cannons all from one side of your ship shooting straight down the front to back of an opponent's ship or back to front. So picture a letter T where I'm sideways and I'm shooting everything down. That's when you do the most damage to ships in the Age of Sail because your cannonballs are going through the entire ship from front to back where it has the least armor doing the most damage. And I was able to finally cross Max's T. Although I lost the game, I felt good. So that tactical
that's all that matters.
Is great.
That sounds awesome. I would definitely be down to play that sometime. That's the war game that I've seen that has piqued my interest the most. So,
and those models that I painted, I didn't paint. They come pre-colored. All I threw was a wash on them. I just blopped a wash on them, and that was enough to make it look gorgeous on the board.
Wow. Definitely interested. Okay. Next for me, I played New York Zoo and Uwe Rosenberg.
Oh, man, I've been wanting to hear about this one because with my Arc Nova hate right now, like I feel like this might be a replacement. So please tell me more.
Oh, this is complete opposite of Arc Nova. It's so simple. And actually, like the day after I played this, the Dice Tower crew actually posted a catch up on it. They had missed reviewing it back in the day. And I shared a lot of their same sentiments. So this is a tile placement game, but it's not like this crazy point salad. It's a race. It's a race to cover the most tiles. So you pretty much only have two decisions on your turn. You're moving an elephant around a rondel. You're either going to be landing on a space that lets you draft a tile that you're going to instantly place into your zoo, or you'll land on a space that lets you get either two of a specific type of animal on that space or one of any animal. And so, of course, you have to have a paddock in your zoo before you can start placing animals, but it's not restricted to specific animals. And as the game progresses, the pile of tiles that you're going to be drawing gets smaller and smaller. And your goal is you want to fill up a paddock with a single type of animal, because once you do, I guess the idea is that, oh, we have too many animals, so we're going to sell off a lot of these. And whenever you sell them off or get rid of them, you get rid of all but one, then you get to pick a tile from this other area where it's like attractions, like a restaurant or a ride, and they're really, really big tiles. So your goal is to fill your board, but you're not only doing that by drafting tiles, you also want your tiles to be filled with animals so that you can draft these other bigger tiles. In addition, if you have at least two of the same kind of animal in the same paddock, anytime you pass a specific space on the board that's breeding for that type of animal, of course, they will have a child, they will reproduce. Anytime that tile fills up, you can then move them to a smaller paddock that you've drafted as the game progresses. Because remember I said the paddock sizes get smaller, and then it's easier to fill up and get more tiles. So it was such a breath of fresh air with tile placement, because I'm used to tile placement being like, oh no, you place this there, so now you're going to have a negative because there's like a hole there and all that. It was forgiving because if there's a hole, well, all I have to do, fill up a paddock, and then I can go get a 1x1 square from this other area that you get for filling up an animal paddock, and I can plug that hole. And I'm horrible at tile placement, but I actually won this game. It was a race, and I won the race, and it was something so different with tile placement. I love it so much. Way better than Arc Nova, but also very much lighter and faster.
So different than Arc Nova.
Oh, yeah.
And when I say that, listen, folks, don't think I really mean like I expect this game to replace Arc Nova. The real draw for me with Arc Nova really is the theme. And so the idea of building a zoo. Is New York Zoo enough theme for you to enjoy as, maybe a replacement for theme?
I think so. There's a couple caveats. So first of all, the little chunky miniatures for the animals are really nice. I don't know if you could see them on BGG, there wouldn't. But the whole mechanic of like, oh, I've filled up this pen, so now I get rid of all but one of them, that seems a little off theme. Like, I could understand, okay, now I have 20 monkeys in my zoo, let me get rid of some of them. But it's like, oh, I have a pen that's filled with 8 penguins, I'm going to get rid of all but one of them. That breaks theme a little. That doesn't bother me that much, but it might be something that irks you.
Okay. And it very polyomino, very tile-based, but not punishing, which is, so not like a Calico. Where
no, oh God, nothing. Calico stresses me out. This game was nice and breezy.
What about family weight?
Oh yeah, I could definitely teach this to my kids easily. Of course, there's some strategy. They may not do well at it their first time, but they can understand the mechanics, no problem.
All positive reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. What else you got?
I got lots of games, man.
Let's keep going.
We really haven't talked too much about all the games we've been playing. Let's go into War Chest. I don't know if I mentioned War Chest on the podcast. I think I mentioned it in the show, the call-in show. But War Chest is a heads-up 2v2 or team game 1v1 or team game 2v2. War Chest by AEG, Alderac Entertainment Group, is a chip game. It's like a poker chip game, and it's a bag builder. You're going to be racing to lay out your control markers before the other team or your opponent does, depending on how many players you're playing. And it plays in about, less than 45 minutes, maybe an hour if you're playing team game, but at 2 players is definitely less than 45 minutes. The game itself, you're going to get 4 units. Each player is going to have 4 units. Every unit's different. There's 16 units to start with. You're going to get 4 units each. They're all very different in how they work. They're going to have between 4 and 5 chips per unit that you're going to be able to use. How do you use those chips? You're either going to use those chips to deploy them on the board so they can be on the board to use them to move and to attack or to take control of locations that are spread out on the board. B, you can use those chips to bolster a unit that's already on the board by placing it on top of a chip that's already there. So placing it on the same unit to make it health 2, right? So every time you get attacked, you lose a chip off that stack. You can add chips to the stack. Or C, you can use that token, that chip that you draw from the bag face down to recruit more units from the supply. When you start the game, you only start with 2 chips per unit in your bag. You're going to start with 9 chips in your bag. You're going to draw 3 chips at the start of the turn, and you're going to use those 3 chips in that kind of a way. Your units may also have options such as tactics. You can spend a chip that you've drawn to activate a unit that's already on the board to use its tactics. Tactics let you break rules. Normally, you can either move 1 space or attack adjacent or control a spot on the board. However, when you use a tactic, they break rules. Like your Lancer. Lancer can move 2 spaces forward in a straight line on this hex board and then attack in a straight line to that unit that's the enemy unit on the other side of those 2 spaces. So you see how I broke rules by using tactics. The archers, they can fire up to 2 distance, and they can fire over other units, so they don't need to have unbroken line of sight. However, they have restrictions, and restrictions do things like prevent the archers from attacking in a normal attack, so they can't do like an adjacent melee attack. They can only ever fire with the ranged attack, and they can't fire adjacent to themselves. So you see how it begins adding that tactical restrictions to figure out how do I best use this unit without being restricted. Then you got a crossbowman, right? They can shoot, right? But they can only shoot in a straight line. They can't shoot past or over other units, and they are still allowed to attack. So it starts to get into this variety of different units and variety of different powers. You draft when you set up. We set up a number of cards on the table, and then we begin drafting our 4 units, so you can try to build combos off of these units. And then the toughest decisions, the part that really makes this fun, which I think is the part that Robert talked about enjoying the most, is the bag building aspect. As you recruit units from the supply to add them to your bag, you have to decide how you're going to use them, because if you start deploying all your chips on the board or bolstering with all your chips on the board, you've now reduced how many chips are in your bag, so that on a later turn, you won't be able to activate. Right? You might have 2 chips in the bag, 3 chips on the board. You'll only ever activate that unit on the board 2 times in a cycle of using your bag. Much like a deck builder, when your bag is empty, you take all your discards, throw them in the bag, shuffle up, and pull out chips. So you see that balance of maybe I just want to have one health unit on the board and 4 chips in my bag so I can reuse that unit over and over again. Or do I put units or chips on the board to make it strong and bolster it, but I won't be able to use it as much? And then the damage starts coming in. And you're like, oh, I know how many chips I've lost for this unit. I know how many chips this unit has left, or I know how many chips Robert has left for his unit on the other side. So I know the odds are low that he's going to be able to activate that unit. So I might be able to make a run towards that unit without it activating first and hurting me, where I can go kill it. You see all the strategies starting to kick in. This is War Chest. It's light, it's fast, it's enjoyable. And my favorite way to play it so far has been team. It was me and William on one team, Robert and Max on the other. And you know, William and I, we argue a lot. And we had a lot of arguing going on, even though we're on the same side, about what we were doing to support the team. And we were down the major majority of the game. But my buddy William came through like a champ. He started cycling that bag, and he got it down to an efficient bag that was activating just the units that he wanted to activate. And he was just murderizing Robert and Max so that I can go and start taking spots. I had cavalry units, so I'm using those units to run and take spots. It's a hit. War chest.
Now, let me ask you a question. You're big on theme. How did you feel about these little poker chip kind of things representing your troops? Because I think they look cool, but did they represent the theme well enough for you?
They do, and they do it in the way that they activate their abilities of the units. Being a war gamer, a historical gamer, or someone who enjoys history, the units themselves all moved or activated or had restrictions and or abilities that were in line with their type, and that made them cool. So like the Royal Guard, whenever you hit a Royal Guard, instead of discarding the chip that's on the board, the Royal Guard allows you to discard chips from the supply. So it's as if the Royal Guards are well bolstered, always there, right? The Barbarian or the Berserker themselves, you can discard chips off the Berserker to be able to do more, to attack more, right? So that's that kind of that fury of like, I'm hurting myself to be able to do more. So yes.
Cool. Very cool. That's one I think I'd be interested in playing. It sounds like it has a lot of mechanics that are right up my alley.
And I love team games, so when we get to Dice Tower, let's make that happen as a team game.
Let's do it. And that's only like 3 weeks away, man.
Oh, I'm so
crazy.
excited.
Next for me, so I played a lot of IP games this past week because again, Jeremy's big into that. I'm not big into a lot of IP games. I'm not big into DC, but he did teach me Batman, the animated series, Gotham City Under Siege, which is maybe the longest board game title I've ever heard of. It's a co-op game, and I'm not huge on co-ops either, but this is one I did enjoy, although we did lose. Yeah, I went into this thinking like, oh, this is kind of simple, like we're going to beat this no problem, and then we ended up losing. So that it kept us on our toes. So it's a co-op game. It's kind of cool that the components, they're only cardboard, but they're it's like a city, it's skyscrapers. And on the north, east, south, and west of the city are different battlegrounds that different bad guys are going to spawn in. And each person has a different asymmetric power. So you can be Batman or Robin or Catgirl, or you could be Commissioner Gordon. And I played the Commissioner and the Gotham City Police Department. Jeremy played Batgirl. And you're fighting, you're playing cards, rolling dice, try to beat people, but at the same time, you're trying to accomplish these goals. So it's called the act card. So it's acts 1 through 4, like the different parts of a movie. And so you're always going to progress to the next act after you finish a round, but you may have a negative effect or miss out on a positive effect if you don't accomplish the act goal. So you're using your dice to try to beat these guys, but at the same time, you're having to use your dice to accomplish these goals. Like, hey, put a 5 on this card. But wait a minute, I want to use that 5 to beat these guys. So I have to decide, do I want to have less bad guys here, or do I want to mitigate that act negative goal? The reason that you don't want to leave the bad guys on the board is because if at the end of the round there are any bad guys, for every stack of bad guys, they get to make a roll, a 50-50 roll against a building. And there's only, I think, 9 buildings. But even if there's buildings left, every time you build a building, you destroy a building, you flip it over and it tells you how much damage it does to the city. So if ever your skyscraper marker gets to 0 or your civilian marker gets to 0, you lose. You let the villains destroy too much stuff or kill too many people. And so the way it works is there are kind of like quote unquote bosses that can go up, but there's also henchmen. So for henchmen, they're numbered 1, 2, or 3. So like, let's say I do 5 damage. That means I could kill 5 1s or 2 2s and a 1 or a 3 and a 2, etc., etc. But you don't just want to lower how many total henchmen are there. You want to eliminate stacks of henchmen. So the ones are all in one stack. Each stack gets to make a roll against the buildings. So if I have a stack of 3, 2, and 1, yes, it would sound cool if I get to kill all those 3s. But if there's, a bunch of 3s and only a couple 1s, if I can eliminate the 1 stack, even though the 1s are quote unquote weaker, that I'm eliminating one of the rolls against the building. So it offered a lot of important decision making. Another thing, so the bosses, they're going to have some type of passive effect, And if they stay out, like if the Joker's out next round, he's going to spawn more henchmen. But the problem with the Joker is he's not a stack. You have to beat him all at once. You may have to give 5 damage just to him. So it's like, do I pile a lot of damage on him, or do I get rid of a lot of his henchmen? So it created a lot of interesting decisions. There was some important, like strategy talk that we had to do together, co-op, and it came down to, we were going into, I think, the final act. So it was close. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. And the components are interesting. For people who like DC, it's light enough if they're not into board gaming that I think this could be a gateway for them into the tabletop community. So I give it a thumbs up.
Right. I'm seeing it and I'm thinking right off the bat, a DC version of Marvel United, kind of a feel like a light co-op-y comic book themed game. So if you like Marvel United, but you're more of a DC fan, it sounds like this, based on your recommendation, this might be a place to go. I can't think of any other titles that would fit that notch.
Right. I mean, I'm a Marvel guy more myself, so I'm biased. So I like Marvel United a lot better. I think mechanics-wise, Marvel United is more solid. But yes, I think it would fill that niche, like you said, for someone who's a DC fan.
And then secondly, if you're a components fan, and I don't think it came through very well, Mitch, because it was the pictures that really helped me understand it, this looks like a minis game. You've got these paper folded buildings with blocks, like street blocks underneath them, and then you set them up on the board almost like a cityscape, and then you've got miniatures that you're using to move around. Is that all accurate for the set that you played?
Yeah.
So yeah, it looks like a 3D miniature game on the table, so it's immersive is what I'm seeing.
Right. The only thing I didn't like is, and maybe it was just the cards that came out, I don't think all the characters can hop on top of the buildings, which I guess that makes sense. Like, I was the police department. Why would they be on top of buildings? Of course, like Batman will go on the building. But I wanted to be bopping around those buildings while I was running around the perimeter to fight the guys. Well, Jeremy was hopping all over the buildings, though.
So you mean you couldn't do everything you want?
Right, because if you're on a building, you can fight someone in any battlefield, whereas being the police department, I could only fight the people that were on the directional side of the buildings where I was standing.
And those limitations make for those interesting decisions.
Right. And again, thematically, it makes sense. Commissioner Gordon's not going to be jumping from rooftop to rooftop.
That is one of the longest names of a game I've ever seen. Batman, the animated series, Gotham City Under Siege. It's a 2018 title by IDW Games, designed by Michael Gugliano and Richard Lanius. Richard Lanius. Oh, geez. Big name there.
Oh, that's the Arkham Horror guy?
Yeah.
I didn't even make the connection.
There you go. I wonder what themes crossed over and mechanisms-wise.
None that I could think of. So that's interesting.
All right. My next game that I want to bring up is Sovereign Skies. Y'all saw me make a mistake on the live show, where Nick Oben called in about Sovereign Skies and described it as the Rondell game it was. I pulled it up on the BGG and I saw a copy there for $15 and immediately made the purchase. To later find out that no, that was just the card expansion pack. So then I ended up having to buy the actual full game to go along with the expansion that I had already committed to buying. So it did come in, and I did get a play of it with Nick Oben and with Brandon Lippy. We did play a three-player game of it. So Sovereign Skies is a 2020 title designed by Aaron Andrew Wilson, and it's published by Deepwater Games. It's a Rondell game. It's a Rondell space-themed game where the Rondell itself are different planets. Each planet's going to have 3 actions that you can do when visiting that planet. Each planet is also going to have a cost of how many ships that you need to have on that planet in order to put an outpost on that planet. So every planet has kind of a different cost to put outposts. And you're going to take your turn by moving your ship in a direction around the Rondell. What's cool about this game is you can spend energy to turn the ship around and go the other direction. So most Rondell games stay in a pattern, one way, always one way. But in this game, you can spend energy to turn the ship around. Energy is a resource that you gain. So you're going to be moving your ship around the board, dropping off these, what do I call them? Drop ships. That's what it is. Drop ships on the planets that you're at. Then you're going to be using the 2 of the 3 actions. Actually, this is cool. Let me say this. The mechanism is there are 3 actions available on each planet. You can choose to use 1 of those 3, and you gain an energy. Or you can use 2 with, it's a push, no energy gained. Or you can use a third one and you must spend an energy. So it's kind of a decision. Yeah, do I hoard up more energy so I can do more stuff on the next planet I want to go to? So you don't ever feel like you landed on a space that you can't do anything, because at minimum you can take one of the actions and you can get an energies for that next spot. Or you can spend energies to go past. Now, we each get an asymmetric ship with asymmetric powers. So that makes it really interesting, because right from the start, we're different factions with different abilities. And you're just going to keep going around the board, gaining either influence with the planet or using the planet's resources to trigger their abilities. And then you're going to be using those influences to score points by using cards that are on there. These cards that you use give you icons. The icons you turn in to get influence with different diplomats or ambassadors on the planet. And you just kind of go round robin until somebody takes the last, I think it's a number of scoring tokens that we have to take to trigger the end game. And then we're going to score up based on everything. Like, everything scores in this game, and that always feels good. So all your energy tokens you have left over, you're going to score for all the scoring markers that you picked up. At the beginning of the game, you're really rushing to grab scoring markers because they're all there, they're all available. As you get towards the mid and late game, once all the scoring markers have pretty much been taken off the board, you then try to steal, almost like Age of War, the dice chucking game from Fantasy Flight Games. You can then steal influence or cards from other players by having more influence with that planet and then kind of taking that scoring marker away from them. So that's where the player interaction starts to kick in, is towards mid to late game, because now the board is kind of devoid of all these scoring points. So I want to go take from you. And then at end of the game, I felt as though the game was quick because it was played in about 45 minutes, which is nice. 45 minutes is a good time frame. But I also felt it was very light. I'm not going to call that bad, because light games are good in my life. This is something that maybe I can use as a Rondel teaching game, because it's not as deep as some other Rondel games might be. But it has that space team. It has beautiful wooden components. Sovereign Skies, played by myself, by Nick, and by Brandon Lippy.
So I got to ask, have you played the Mistakenly Ordered expansion yet?
We did not include the expansion till after, because it was a teaching game. Nick was teaching it. I would say all it adds is cards, not new mechanisms. It adds more cards, which Nick said the game needed, because the decks are kind of not deep for all the different things you can trigger.
No wonder it was so cheap. It was just cards, right?
Yep, I got tricked. I would say try before you buy would be my recommendation on this one. You may like the theme, you may like the mechanism, but it may end up being too light for you and your group. So try it before you buy it.
Fair enough. I like Rondels.
Skies. I'm learning that. Yeah. I'm learning to like Rondels.
Yeah. Another game for me, I played Mistborn House War. This is not a well-known title at all. I'm a big Brandon Sanderson fan, and I have been for a while. I know everybody knows who he is now, because he now has the most funded Kickstarter ever for his 4 books that he wrote during COVID. But he's a fantasy author, probably the best modern fantasy author out there. And one of my favorite series that he wrote was Mistborn. Some of his other, the Reckoners board game is also based on his books. So this was back in 2017. This game came out, and honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, in a lot of ways, this is kind of a predecessor to King's Dilemma, and that's a big statement to make. I don't think it was literally the inspiration for it, but as I'm thinking about the mechanics, there are some similarities. So basically, in Mistborn House War, it's following this first book in his series. Your classic, you're trying to take down an emperor kind of thing, and there are different warring houses, and they have different goals. And so you're playing one of these houses in this game, and what happens is there's a deck called a problem deck, and every round a new problem is going to come out, and some of them are going to be more urgent than the others. There's 4 different urgency levels, but at the beginning of each round, also every problem moves up in urgency, and once it moves from urgency 4 to 5, it's going to erupt, and there's going to be some kind of consequence from that eruption. Now that sounds like a bad thing, and a lot of the times it is, but depending on what your house may want, you may want it to erupt. It might help you more. That's why I'm saying it kind of feels like a King's Dilemma, like we have different goals. And so you're collecting resources by playing cards, and you have income that you get. And on your turn, what you're going to do is you're going to try to solve a problem. And this is definitely a competitive game, but you may, and you almost always have to, enlist the help of the other houses to fix a problem. So I may need food and military and money to fix this problem, but I only have the food and the military. So once I pick this problem, I'm going to say, hey, will you help me do this? And they'll say, yeah, but give me this. So the thing is, every problem has, I think it's called a glory value, which is basically victory points. And so if it's 15 and I'm asking you to give me one resource of the 10 or whatever, I might try to only give you 2 honor. And they're like, well, you can't do it without me, so I want 5 of the honor. So it's a bargaining game. But here's the kicker. So there's a certain card in that deck, and you can put it at different depths to depend on you know, how long you want the game to last. Once that card comes out, the end of the game is going to be triggered. If you don't fix that problem, it puts what's called the unrest marker up 4. So if ever the unrest gets to, I believe it's 8, and this can happen even before that card comes out, then that means like the empire falls. And so you could either end with the empire continuing on or falling. If the empire continues, you want to have the most honor because you want to be close to the emperor, right? Or it's called favor. That's what it is, favor. If the empire falls, you want to be as far away from the emperor as possible because he's disgraced. So you either want to have the most or the least points, and you don't know until the end of the game. And even going throughout the game, Carlos doesn't like you. And so another thing is you're putting favor and disgrace in your pocket. So even you don't know how much you have until the end of the game. You're kind of having to try to keep a running tally, but at the same time, you don't even know if you want to go high or low. So do you go middling or do you focus on high? And then if you're focusing on high, you need to be letting the problems push you toward the emperor staying in power. But if you're going low, you may want to let something erupt that's going to increase the unrest so that you can win by having the lowest score. A lot of tricky decision points in this one. I enjoy it. It's not the best game ever. I think the IP is what makes me enjoy it so much because I like the book so much. If you like Brandon Sanderson, I recommend this one.
Your description really gave me a lot of feels of King's Dilemma in that sense. That part of not knowing how to win, right? Whether unrest will occur or not. I've seen that done in other games, and it's interesting because it's very difficult to manage. It really is focused on the group of players. Like the players together really are going to make or break that game with that mechanism.
Right. So yeah, it like I'm just thinking of the people I played with. I played with Jeremy and Connor. And Connor, if I could be like, hey, can I get one of your resources and like let's do some math. One of this many resources means you get this percentage of the honor. And he'd be like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. I go to Jeremy and be like, hey, you're giving me one resource. I'll give you like 2 of these points. Like, no, you're giving me half of it, or I'm not helping you. So absolutely true. It depends on who you're playing with. By the way, this is published by Crafty Games, designed by Kevin Wilson.
And I got a feel of like Moonrakers also, because Moonrakers is, as Rob's played it and described it, it's a game where you really need other people to help you on missions to win. So it's figuring out what can I offer, what can I give them out of winning this mission in order to get their help and their aid to finish this mission. So it's striking that balance of how much is their help worth to me so that I can win it. And I struggle at that. I struggle at valuing that.
If you let them help too much and then you have to give them too much of a payout, then you're helping them on your turn more than you're helping yourself. Yeah, I'm not great at it either, but it creates some fun interactions, player interactions during the game.
I'm glad you got to play it and bring it up to, because doing this conversation that we're having here is great because we get to hear about games that we would normally not see within our game group. And here's a game that I didn't expect to play. I got introduced to it at game day. This was, I think Michelle brought this game, and it's Archaeology. It's called Archaeology, The New Expedition. It's a 2016 title. It's a title by Phil Walker Harding, and it's a Asmodee production. It's a card game. It's a light card game. It's a set collection card game. So it's themed in the desert, themes like, I guess like an Indiana Jones-y feel to it, kind of a post-World War I time frame, World War II-ish. And you're in the desert searching for treasures. You're going to be having a tableau of cards in the center that cards get discarded to. And then each card is going to have a value, 1, 2, 3, I think up to 6 on some of the cards. and you're going to have a hand of cards with different artifacts as well in there with the same values. You're going to be using an action to take cards from your hand, summing up the value of the cards, whatever number value they're given, and then you can trade for cards that are on the board up to that value in any way you want. So I can take maybe a 2 and a 4 out of my hand. I got a total of 6. I'm going to drop it on the table, and I can grab 6 1s, right, to refill my hand with, so that I can have matching sets of something. Right? So you're going to try to build these sets in your hand. But watch out, because in the deck, every time you take a turn, you have to draw from the deck. You might get a sandstorm. A sandstorm means that all cards that you have in your hand, you round down to half and discard. They all get thrown in the middle of the table for everyone. Or there might be some cards in the deck called the robber. If you draw a robber card, you can now yourself choose another player and steal a card from their hand. So there's always these chances that the board will take cards from you, or other players will take cards from you. So as you start building your sets, each set has a different number they want to get to score at different values. So as an example, some sets might have sets of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and they kind of have real low increments, like 2, 6, 8, 10, 12, based on how many cards you have in your set. So you need to display them in front of you by selling to the museum, is what they call it. Put them in front of you to protect them. So now you ask yourself, am I pushing my luck? I have 4 of these. It's going to score me 20 points. But if I can get that 5th one, I'll get 30 points. Right? So maybe I'll hang on to them, but if a sandstorm comes, whoosh, they're out of your hand. You lose them, right? Because you lose half your hand. So it's that push your luck piece of how far can I go collecting the set without someone taking it from me, or without sandstorms taking it from me. One of the mitigation factors is a tent. Everyone gets a tent. Once per game, you're allowed to flip that tent down in order to protect your stuff from a sandstorm. So you've got a little bit of protection up until you use your tent. So you play, everybody takes a turn real fast. You either draw from the deck to start with, or you either take an action by switching cards on the board that you can see, or by selling to the museum to protect sets, right? You just drop them in front of you to protect them. Or there's this tableau, or this little table area for the pyramid. If you have a number of maps, you can trade in maps for some cards that are face down on the front of the board. The first level is 1 map, and it's got like 2 cards underneath it. The next level is like 2 maps, and it's got like 6 cards underneath it face down. And the third one has like 3 maps. It'll get you like 8 or 10 cards. I can't recall exactly. But you can see that trade aspect. I can collect some maps to try to trade them for those treasures, so I can get a bunch more face down cards that can go into my hand to try to build some sets. So it's interesting decision points for push your luck piece. Like, I really want to get some more of these, but then waiting out the storms. But you know how many there are. So once you get that last one, if you have your tent, you can see how the decisions come through. It played quick, and it scored easy. It scored pretty fast. This is Archaeology, the new expedition.
I've never heard of that one. The theme doesn't excite me too much on that one, but it seems to have excited you, so that's okay. We can be different.
I was gonna say no, like right off the bat when they said,
really?
"Hey, let's play one more game," but then I saw the theme, and I'm like, "Ooh, indie, let's go."
Yeah. I have a question for you, Carlos. Have you played Agricola? I know it's an oldie.
I have, and it's probably been 10 plus years.
I played it for the first time, and I regretted it. I know I was big on an Uwe game. Sorry, I just said Uwe the way you do. Oh my gosh, you're a negative influence. Uwe. I loved New York Zoo. Agricola, when I started playing it, I didn't like it. By the end of the game, I was hot on it. And then I started playing on a BGA afterward, and I'm down on it again. So for people that don't know, you're basically building a farm, and it's a ton of rounds, and it's a worker placement game, but the worker placement spaces are cards that flip out throughout the game. So you don't always have the ability to do certain things. You don't know which order certain actions are going to go. So I feel like your first play, you're always going to be very confused because it's like they're talking about, this is how this mechanic works. I'm like, well, how do I do that? And they're like, oh, just wait till the card comes out. It's a game where pretty much everything is points, but if you don't have those things, pretty much everything is negative points. It's a lot that you have to juggle. Finally, by the end of my first game, I understood what I was supposed to be doing because it's like, I want to do this. Oh, you can't do this because you haven't done that. Well, how do I do that? Well, the card hasn't come out for that yet. So then the card for that comes out. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this now. And it's like, you can't do that yet. You haven't done that yet. And it's just this constant cycle of like, you can't do this. You have to first have built a field, and then once you build the field, then you got to plant things in the field. Or first you have to build a room, and then you have to upgrade that room, and then you have to have a child to put in that room. It's just like levels on levels on levels. It's like a 3.64 weight, which I totally get it. The reason that I don't like it as much on my second play now, after the first play, I thought I knew what I was doing. And then my second play, I feel like I'm back to learning the game, because every time you play, different spaces are going to come out at different times, so you have to completely rework what you were planning on doing. And that's why I'm not a big fan of it. Also, the theme to me is super blah. Maybe in 2007 when it came out, that was like monumental to have a game about a farm, but I feel like there's way too much of that already, and it doesn't get me excited.
I think the aspect of you can't do like you do in viticulture, where you kind of path out what spaces you're going to go through throughout the arc of it, because you don't know what's going to be out there until they start flipping. Right? So you really can't strategically plan. You got to just stay in the tactical. And then for me, the part that I didn't enjoy as much was the feed your people piece. Like, it's very punishing.
Yes. Well, so in worker placement games, my first thing I would do almost always is max out my workers. And I didn't realize until afterward, I knew the more workers you have, the more you have to feed them. But as I got more workers, I was only using those workers to get food to feed those workers. It was almost a net zero thing. And so, I mean, I'm never going to do that again. I might get one extra worker, but even though they're points at the end of the game, they let me do more actions, they're almost not worth it in most situations. And, you know, some people might like this game because their mindset is more of an on-the-fly optimizing and not that long-term planning. But long-term planning, that is my jam. I love games where you can do that. And if you screw up, if you get screwed over, it's your fault because you made this mistake 5 turns ago. I'm okay with that. But if I'm getting screwed over because of a card flip and, you know, I was planning on doing something, now I can't, that doesn't sit as well with me.
Especially for a longer, deeper game.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything else?
I got a game last night. Played Maglev Metro. We played it on stream live. We're starting to do more of that. Robert and I are figuring out how the intertubes work and how to like broadcast stuff. So we played it live. This last play again just solidifies what a hot title this is. It's a 7.3 on the BGG. It's designed by Ted Alspach, and it's published by Bézier Games. Maglev Metro. You're working to efficiently upgrade the Manhattan subway system to Maglev technology. You're going to be using robots to efficiently maximize your board for doing things like laying track, building new stations, for increasing the capacity of your trains, increasing how many folks you can pick up, how many folks you can drop off. And you're doing that efficiency creation by using the commuters that you pick up and drop off. So it's very much starts off as a pick up and deliver game, because you have to pick up robots and commuters in order to drop them off. And when you drop them off, you place them on your personal player board that indicates what actions are available to you. And for many of those actions, how powerful those actions are, right? So you're going to play those actions and see how powerful they are, because you're going to add more robots to that action. So in other words, instead of moving from one station to one station for one action, you can now move maybe 2 stations worth of movement for one action. You get 2 actions per round. Or you can build 2 layers of track, 2 tiles of track in one action, 3 up to 4 actions worth of track each time you take the track action. So it's a balance between using those workers to gain more actions, because there's a segment of the track of your player board that allows you to place those commuters in order to unlock 3rd and 4th actions per round. Or I can use those commuters to increase the efficiencies of the actions I do have access to. So I like that balance. Like, which lever do I pull? Do I take a lot more smaller actions, or do I stick to a few very strong actions that can do a lot? That's not the best part of the game. That's a great part of the game. But the best part of the game is the aesthetics for me. They use these clear acrylic tiles, hexes, that have your colored track laid on them. And when you can, 4 players lay up to 4 tiles on one hex. They will all overlay so that they're adjacent to each other. And as we build our boards and start laying track, you can start to see almost what looks like a subway map with the colored lines going in throughout the board for, which track or which subway goes where. It just looks beautiful. And for me, I think of it more like a rondel game, maybe. I like to create a loop to different stations and then just go around that loop over and over again, pretty much doing similar, the same actions as efficiently as I can to try to build up more commuters. Whereas Patrick played yesterday, and he used the hub in the center of the board to do more of a spoke, where he was going out, spoking out to each individual station, and then going back to the hub to drop stuff off, and then kind of shooting back out to another station. So it gives you options of different play. But Maglev Metro.
Is there something that other people can do to stop you from just having that efficient loop? Is there any way to stop you?
They can get there first and pick up your passengers.
Okay, gotcha.
Because we're fighting over the same passengers.
That makes me think of Zaya. Ron Fraser was talking about on the call-in show a while back. Zaya, there's a lot of ways to get points, but it's a space exploration game, and one of the ways to get points is by trading. And so if you find a planet that produces a good right next to a planet that buys that good, you can just spam that back and forth real quick and like win the game. And in one of the expansions, what they did was they created like a closed economy where like once so much of this good is sold until another good is sold, you can't sell it. So I was wondering if there's a way to stop it, and you're saying there is. So okay.
Yeah, we definitely look at each other's boards, because I can see, for example, Rob has a commuter on his train, but his capacity is 2, so he can only ever pick up one more commuter, right? So I see he's headed towards a station that I'm wanting to go to is loaded with stuff. I don't have to worry as much, because at most he's only going to be able to pick up 1, right, of those commuters.
Gotcha. I played another game I'm going to be negative on. Have you played Chronicles of Crime? I think I've heard you talk about it before.
I have not played through a whole one. I've only started one with the goggles and such of Chronicles and Crime.
Started a single mission?
Yeah, like the first mission, the cat lady with the dead cats everywhere.
Well, so is it like a campaign, Chronicles of Crime?
No, each mission is segmented on its own. No, but I didn't finish that first mission. I was just kind of playing around with the interface because it looked cool.
Okay, I see. Yeah, so I was at my friendly local gaming store, and somebody said, let's play Chronicles of Crime. It'll fit all these people that want to play. And, man, I hated it so much. That is not a board game. That is like a story. There are 0 mechanics. You just QR code this, listen, read what it says, this long-winded thing. You better remember every single detail or you're going to lose. And it went on for so long. And then at the end, we didn't even get it 100% right. I do think it's kind of cool that like the VR thing you're talking about where you have to describe the crime scene. That was kind of cool. But literally the first time we played, and I don't want to give any spoilers or anything, but suffice it to say, like there was a wreck and we're investigating the wreck and we're like, hey, we need to, get all the details we can. The car exploded, like literally probably 10 minutes into us playing the game, and we died. And I was like, oh, man, I'm glad that's over. That wasn't enjoyable. And then they're like, let's play again. And I was like, oh, great. So they're like, let's move away from the car. And then we went on to question people for 2 hours, and it was just not an enjoyable experience for me. They did say that was one of the longest, hardest missions they had done. So maybe it was a disservice that I started with this one. It was from one of the expansions, the Noir expansion. It was like in the 20s or 30s or something. But yeah, not my jam. I don't know if have you played Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective? That's one where, again, you're just trying to solve a mystery, but you're just like reading through like legal documentation, like you're an actual police officer. That's not enjoyable to me. I need some mechanics. I'm not trying to actually solve crimes. I'm trying to play a game that simulates that.
It sounds like Modern Detective would also not fit the bill for you, because I have played that one, and that very much is reading documents and trying to solve clues with some mechanisms for like a clock, right? How you burn the clock to end the game. Each action you do wastes time. I think Chronicles of Crime is similar to that, and that's probably why I didn't finish it, because like you said, it felt more like a cool, gimmicky activity than it did a board game.
Yeah, the way it works is every time you scan a QR code, it's 5 minutes. But this is another thing I don't like. You don't know when your time is up. I mean, I guess that simulates real life. Like, hey, if you don't catch the guy fast enough, he's going to get away. So you're having to make this decision. Do I think that I need this information enough to waste 5 minutes to mean we might lose the game? But the problem is, like, sometimes you'll scan and you get nothing. Like, you'll scan and be like, and the person will be like, oh, I don't know. And then there are some cool things where like you can punch the dude to see if it'll get you more information or bribe him. But sometimes nothing happens. Like one time we punched a dude and he pulled out a gun and we were like, okay, fine, bye. So it's just a lot of negative experiences where like, okay, we wasted that time for nothing. And I think that's another reason why I didn't like it.
All right, folks, that's a roundup of what we've been playing lately. And the goal for today was to catch you up because Mitch and I both been playing a lot of games. We had our game day. Next episode in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about the Castles of Burgundy, which we just started a tournament on Board Game Arena within the Beans and Dice Discord group. And Mitch, you introduced me to Castles of Burgundy. Was it Mitch?
No, it was Wayne.
It was Wayne. Wayne introduced me to Castles of Burgundy over the last couple weeks, and Robert says I'm playing too much of it. So I'm looking forward to getting more games in so I can give you a more in-depth conversation on why I'm liking this really old game.
Now, let me clarify. The tournament has not yet started. It's going to be starting in a few weeks. So if you want to get in on that, you need to hop in the Discord and get signed up. There's a lot of people already entered. It's high stakes here. We want to get more people if possible.
Yeah, and join us on the Discord. You can find the Discord through the Facebook group. There's a link there. I'll post a link in the description as well of this show with the Beans and Dice Discord, so you can join the Discord there, and you can just move to the Castles of Burgundy tournament room. Our buddy Getty is putting that together for us, so we'll have more content for you in 2 weeks to talk about the Castles of Burgundy and then catch you up on other games that we've played. And then right after that, we should be like at Dice Tower.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's getting close.
Well, great conversation, Mitch. Thanks so much for helping me with the roundup. I appreciate it. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for watching the Beans and Dice podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe.